You know what else you hate to see? Fucking Jacob deGrom getting another Tommy John surgery, which I was trying to say to a Rangers friend of mine that the body language of deGrom coming off the mound in his last start was the most obvious I need Tommy John realization body language perhaps we've ever seen in the history of the sport. Like that one, you never, as a baseball fan, doesn't matter if you're a Ranger fan, deGrom fan, whatever, you do not put out into the universe, oh, that's Tommy John. You just don't do that. But that was the most slam dunk. That's a Tommy John written all over it situation. Jacob deGrom is last time out.
Well, it's unfortunate that it has come to this, and it's unfortunate, I think, that a lot of baseball fans have been, with a clenched jaw, sort of waiting for this moment. You hate to think that we've been waiting for this moment because it feels like like there's 5 of us staring at each other right now, and it feels like all 5 of us at some point were like, well, kind of knew this was going to happen. Kind of felt like this was going to be an end result with all of the ticky-tack injuries that have occurred. It felt like inevitably, as the focus started to hone in on one spot more and more, that this was going to be a result. It's heartbreaking. I think the Rangers are also heartbroken because they got zero insurance.
Oh, not good. Here was Jacob deGrom talking about getting Tommy John surgery.
It's tough, so, but
all right.
I went through this before, and know what it takes to get back. So that's the goal. Go out there, rehab as the best I can, and be around to help, any way I can. We got a special group here, and and then I'll be able to be out there and help them win. It stinks. So this is what we love to do, but finding this out, coming here more, wanting to be out here and helping the team, it's a disappointment. So
obviously a very emotional Jacob deGrom. That's going to be a mixture of feelings there. Where
that's all of it. That's all
like
of it right
I want to be out there, but I can't be. I signed this huge contract with a new team. This is a huge letdown for me personally and for them. A lot of people said, a lot of haters said that this was going to happen, and then it did. They're right. That sucks. And also the mortality of you as a baseball player, where this is the second time you've gone through this. We don't know what his experiences were the first time he went through this. Mentally, it's when you're at the top of your game. And Jacob deGrom, I think people kind of misinterpreted what I said. I didn't call him the pitcher of the generation. Like that's reserved for the Kershaws and the Verlanders of the world. But had Jacob deGrom had the health of those guys, it's a different conversation. If he had made it to the big leagues sooner than those guys, it's a different conversation. When we're talking about the talent, the stuff, the ability, he belongs in that conversation. But he didn't have the same health as those guys. He didn't get to the big leagues at the same time as those guys. So that's got to be just an all-encompassing, very shitty, deflating, discouraging, depressing feeling if you're Jacob deGrom.
And all of it is like you said, and like you can hear it in there. That's pain from injuries 10 years ago. That's pain from not being able to be as consistent as he would have liked to have been over the course of his entire career. And that's pain from him knowing the narrative that surrounds him. And it's pain knowing that he is what I have said he is, and what I think you guys could agree with, when healthy, the greatest arm talent our game has.
I agree. I can't help but contrast the conversation and the feeling around Noah Syndergaard that we had the other day and this, where Syndergaard is a guy who had the nastiest stuff and was at the top of his game and is miles away from even being able to grasp that same quality of stuff and effectiveness. Whereas Jacob deGrom, like every time he steps on the mound almost is peak performance, or he was still bringing it this year and at arguably the best per inning level in the sport. And, but he can't stay healthy enough to do it over a sustained period, it seems like. So I'm not trying to say one's more frustrating than the other, but I just couldn't help but draw that comparison from a guy who's lost it to a guy who just still has it but can't stay out there.
Well, no, I mean, Jay, if you're giving your ligaments away to one of the two dudes based on what you see from them early, like you're going Jacob deGrom.
Yeah. Your point about maybe the greatest arm talent our game has, just want to reiterate how good Jacob deGrom has been. His peak has basically been from age 30 to 35, which is kind of unique in its own right. But best adjusted ERA from age 30 to 35 all time, Jacob deGrom's at 191. Then it's a guy named Bullet Rogan at 168 and Randy Johnson at 167. So not only, Randy Johnson's peak was like my childhood. And I couldn't imagine a pitcher more dominant than what Randy Johnson was at his peak. And at least by ERA, Jacob deGrom is on a completely different level than what even Randy Johnson was doing, let alone what Mr. Bullet was doing.
Is that your third cousin, Jared? Cousin of the Rocket? Bullet?
No, Bullet, RIP Bullet.
Yeah, and Randy Johnson was throwing fucking no-hitters at 45, so.
Yeah. I mean, his peak were his late 30s with the D-backs when he was winning like 3 Cy Youngs in 4 years or whatever it was. But yeah, I think the whole thing about deGrom, now we're talking 2025, like the rest of this year, kiss 2024 goodbye as well.
Well, you're probably thinking like second half of 25.
Maybe. I still think it's before the All-Star break in 25, but you never know. I mean, it's his second one, and he's not a spring chicken either.
The news release said that they were hoping to have him back by the end of 24, which I think that's the hope right now. So if that's the hope right now, I think we can all just fast forward to 25.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, but you would hope the start of.
Yeah.
Well, and to the point about him not being a spring chicken, he could probably go one or two ways, right? And maybe this is a conversation they had with Verlander as well. We can either accelerate this as necessary, as needed. If you're feeling good, we'll keep going. We're not going to pull you back. We're not going to, I know you feel good, but let's wait it out a little longer. We're not going to go that route because you're not a spring chicken. So if it's going good, we're going to keep it moving. Or they can say, look, you don't have the essence of youth on your side. So maybe we should take this a little easier. If you're going to give this one more go, and if you want to come back, this is the way we think we could do it the best. So it'll be interesting to see how the rehab actually goes. Because I think we all in a perfect world would love to have more Jacob deGrom in our life sooner than later. But if it meant having more of Jacob deGrom over the long haul in our life, I think we would want that too.
Yeah. It was very annoying seeing some of the reactions on Twitter being like, well, he does it to himself. He doesn't have to throw 101
out of here.
Like he does it to his own body. Like,
shut the fuck
like Clayton Kershaw throws 93. Like that's why he stays healthy. Like Jacob deGrom is out there throwing 101 on purpose.
Yeah,
like
Clayton Kershaw is not getting ready 3.5 hours before the game and loosening the backup and all this shit just because he wants to. Because he's like, you know what? I'd rather do that than the 95, 96 I used to have. I didn't like pitching then, so I'd rather throw in a fucking back injury and a lot of preparation because that's better. That sounds better. That's got longevity written all over it.
There were people that were actually holding it against Jacob deGrom that he throws triple digits. It's like, well, maybe if he wasn't an asshole and didn't throw 100, then maybe he'd stay healthier and he wouldn't need to, shred every fiber in his elbow. It's like, fuck off. But I mean, I guess now's as good of a time as ever to revisit the Jacob deGrom contract. It's like, I called it reckless. That's not to say that, no team should have offered him a contract. Like,
Jared, no insurance,
Yeah,
zero insurance on the contract.
Yeah, whose decision was that? Like someone's getting fired for that.
Like that's the reckless part.
Yeah, it's
That's
almost
the
like
reckless
it's
part.
almost like hiring a contractor that's already ghosted you before and giving him $6,700, and then when he ghosts you again, like being like, "Whoa, I didn't believe that happened." Like that's kind of on you at that point.
That's the insurance thing is a two-way street, though. You got to find somebody who's willing to insure the contract. And the way that I read the Steven Strasburg situation, at least, was that the cost of insuring it / the availability of insurers to provide insurance for it was so limited and or so costly that it basically was not an
That's
option.
usually a bad
And
sign.
I'm not saying
if that happens.
Well, that's its own warning sign, right? For sure. But I don't know if that's true with Jacob deGrom, but it's not always like, oops, we forgot to get insurance on it. It might be no one was willing to insure this contract.
Yeah.
Which, as Joey points out, might be something to consider before issuing the contract. But I just wanted to point that out.
Is there any way to salvage this deal at this point? Like, because if you sign him for 5 years, you're hoping that the front end of it, you're getting some prime years of Jacob deGrom, and you're willing to eat the
back
other
end.
side of the hill on the back end. Now you're only going to get the back end. Is there any way that this contract is salvageable?
Yeah, they win the World Series when he comes back and he's beasts like Justin Verlander. Could happen, man. You never fucking
It's not
know.
impossible.
Definitely.
No,
it's not
I mean, in all honesty, Joey, if he rolls out fucking, when's the contract up? 28?
He will have, when he comes back, I think he will have 3 more seasons. It was a 5-year deal, right? So he'll have 23, 24. So at the end of 27.
So then ask yourself this. At the end of 27, if Jacob deGrom has made
Plus a
50 starts,
option.
if Jacob deGrom has made 50 starts over a 3-year period and won the World Series, is it salvageable? Is it salvaged?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you just win one, I've always said that.
Yeah.
If you win one in the window of a big contract and that player played a big role in it, then it's worth it. Jacob deGrom is getting $40 million next year to rehab. $40 million next year.
The problem, to Jared's point, is that these were supposed to be the good years.
Yeah,
These
you're
were
supposed to cash in here.
Right. And the team is clearly, even more than we anticipated, this team is ready to go around Jacob deGrom, ready to compete for a World Series, and he would have given them the difference maker in the postseason that we talked about. I mean, we should just get. It is a complete disaster that this is happening.
There's
as it relates
to
relates to Jacob deGrom's contract. Not necessarily. They can probably still win big without him. I think they've proven that to a degree. But as it relates specifically to this contract that they signed entering, this is as bad as it could have gone, obviously.
So now, like, there's a ton of language in this deal to where, to what J.A. mentioned earlier, the contract is through 2027. Now it's through 2028 because he got Tommy John. So it's almost like you're losing 2024. So now you owe us 2028. I don't know how wise that is, but here's how it's worded. Club option for 2028 is triggered if in 2023 through 26, deGrom has Tommy John surgery or any right elbow or shoulder injury causing him to be on the injured list for 130 consecutive days in any season or in 186 days in a row during any service period. The club option triggers at $37 million if during the contract deGrom finishes in the top 5 of the Cy Young vote 3 times or more, or pitches at least 725 innings. It triggers at $30 million if during the contract deGrom finishes in the top 5 of the Cy Young vote once or pitches at least 625 innings. It triggers at $20 million if deGrom falls short of the higher performance thresholds. So that would be $20 million.
Yeah.
And
I guess unless he comes back in 25 or 26 and finishes in the top 5 of the Cy, right? Which you're not necessarily mad about. If you're the Rangers and he comes back and does that, that probably says good things about both that you want him for that next season and what it did for your team in those seasons. So that makes a lot of sense. Gives them a little bit of protection, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also like, all right, the engine in this new car that you knew already had a Carfax report attached to it, blew out. And guess what you get on the other end of that? The same car, the same engine, kind of tuned up, maybe some replacement parts. Well, not maybe, there are some replacement parts here. And we're gonna still run you out there, and we hope that you're able to run the race the way that we thought you were going to be able to run the race when we rolled you off the showroom floor. Like that's our protection as an organization. I don't know if I would call that protection. That's just kind of hoping, hey, if it holds up and it sticks together, we're going to run them out there again and see what we got with them. That's what we get. Like that's your answer. Like, what are you getting on the other side of this, Texas? Well, if the arm holds up, we're going to get him again. Okay, but to what just like, we'll just have him again. And it'll be after a second Tommy John, and it's going to be later down the road. And that's protection. That's insurance. Fuck.